December 2nd was supposed to be an ordinary night on Netflix until one documentary dropped and shattered the entire entertainment world. Sean Combs, The Reckoning. 4 episodes, 4 hours,
We're
and
losing.
within minutes of release, millions of viewers felt the same icy realization. This wasn't a documentary. This was a grave being opened. What people saw wasn't filtered drama or celebrity gossip. It was raw, disturbing, unedited truth stitched together from decades of secrets Diddy thought would stay buried forever. The opening scenes alone sent social media into chaos, blurred faces trembling as they told their stories, surveillance clips from hotel hallways, frantic late-night phone calls, witness testimonies that connected dots across years, cities, and lives. For the first time, the public saw what insiders whispered about for decades. A man who used power like a weapon, silence like currency, and fear like oxygen. As the minutes passed, more details surfaced. Hidden camera footage, private recordings, uncut confessions from people who had been too terrified to speak until now. And then, the darkest part, the adult-themed content and interviews from individuals describing the private world Diddy controlled. People realized these weren't allegations floating on fan blogs. These were stories backed by timestamps, recordings, and the voices of survivors trembling through their truth. Twitter caught fire. TikTok went into investigative mode. Podcasts went live in the middle of the night. Suddenly, everybody was asking the same question. How did this stay hidden for so long? Before going deeper into this video, make sure to like this video, subscribe to our channel, and hit the bell icon. That's how you'll never miss any breaking updates like this. Now let's get back to the story. As the hours rolled by, the documentary dug even deeper, revealing conversations tying Diddy to violent incidents, abusive encounters, and even old mysteries the industry never dared to touch. Clips in the film hinted at his alleged involvement in the deaths of Tupac and Biggie. Former insiders spoke in shadowed interviews, describing meetings, payments, and warnings they received. Their voices shook, but their stories were sharp, consistent, and chilling. The online reaction was immediate and brutal. This is career-ending. This is criminal. This is the biggest expose in entertainment history. Even people who once idolized Diddy were stunned into silence. Fans paused scenes, compared them to past interviews, dug up old articles, and discovered disturbing similarities that stretched across decades like a trail of smoke leading back to the same fire. News outlets across the globe picked it up. Morning shows opened with questions like, does this documentary change the entire Diddy case? And has the truth finally been revealed? Legal experts warned that the evidence shown in The Reckoning could trigger real courtroom consequences. And they were right, because this wasn't just a documentary release. It was the beginning of a storm so powerful that within days, it would drag Diddy back into a federal courtroom, expose the truth he hid for years, and lead to the one sentence he feared more than anything else: life behind bars. Episode 2 of The Reckoning didn't just continue the story. It tore the lid off every dark corner people suspected but could never prove. The tone shifted from shocking to suffocating as Netflix began stitching together pieces of evidence that had lived in the shadows for decades. It opened with a blurred interview, a woman whose voice trembled as she described nights that felt like traps. Then the screen cut to raw hallway footage, time-stamped and grainy, showing a frantic figure rushing away while another shadow followed behind. The moment viewers matched that timestamp with Cassie's old testimony, the internet exploded. People realized they weren't watching accusations. They were watching confirmation. The episode deepened with audio files that felt too real to be entertainment. A phone call, muffled breathing, a panicked woman saying, "Please stop," a commanding voice interrupting her, and finally a chilling sentence: "Handle it before it spreads." For years, critics dismissed similar stories as rumors, but here they were, captured, time-verified, forensic tested, and matched with identical accounts from unrelated survivors. Then the documentary went darker, exposing adult-themed clips that only needed a second of blurred visuals and muted audio to reveal the horror behind them. Survivor after survivor recounted nights where they felt trapped, controlled, or coerced inside Diddy's carefully curated private environments. Different people, different years, different coasts, yet their stories aligned that almost word for word. It wasn't chaos, it was a pattern. And patterns are what courts look for. As social media reacted, people began cross-referencing these stories with old interviews and hidden reports. Someone found a 2005 radio interview hinting at the same type of behavior. Another resurfaced a security guard confession that no one took seriously at the time. Everything that once looked like unrelated drama suddenly formed a clear, frightening narrative. But the reckoning wasn't done. It pivoted into the oldest, most controversial chapter of Diddy's past, Tupac Shakur and Biggie Smalls. For decades, the internet speculated about Diddy's alleged involvement in the events leading to their murders. But the documentary didn't rely on speculation. It brought in anonymous insiders, gang affiliates, and former security members who described meetings, payments, and warnings that sounded too specific to be coincidence. Graphics showed unexplained financial transfers, phone logs, witness recollections, alleged comments made behind closed doors. One former associate said in a disguised voice, "People think this was about rivalry. It was never that simple." Viewers paused, rewound, rewatched, because suddenly the idea that Diddy's darkness extended far beyond Cassie, beyond private abuse, into the realm of orchestrated violence was no longer outlandish. It was terrifyingly plausible. Podcasts dedicated entire episodes to analyzing those segments. TikTok lawyers dissected every clip. Reddit threads became a digital crime board connecting murder cases to scenes in the documentary. And with every minute that passed, the pressure on Diddy intensified. This was no longer a PR crisis. This was a complete character collapse documented on film. People began asking, how was all of this hidden? How many people covered it up? How many careers disappeared because of what they saw? And the bigger question, if the world just watched undeniable proof, what would a federal judge do when this evidence reached his desk? The answer was coming, faster than anyone expected. Cassie Ventura's legal team didn't just watch the reckoning, they studied it like investigators reviewing a crime scene. While the internet reacted emotionally, her attorneys reacted strategically. They sat around a long table, laptops open, notes spread everywhere, replaying every clip frame by frame. And with every pause, zoom and rewind, their expressions grew heavier. This documentary wasn't sensationalism, it was verification. Point after point, story after story, evidence layered over evidence. The first moment that made the room go silent was the hallway footage. One lawyer froze the frame and whispered, "This is the night she told us about." The timestamp matched Cassie's sealed testimony nearly to the minute. The shadows, the panic, the sequence of movements. It all aligned. Another attorney pulled out an old folder labeled Incident Number 4, flipping to a statement Cassie wrote years earlier. When they compared the descriptions to the documentary clip, the resemblance was chilling. But then came the audio recordings, the ones Diddy hoped the world would never hear. Voices arguing, a woman pleading, a man giving orders. Background noises that matched locations Cassie had detailed in her original deposition. The attorneys listened in silence, their faces tightening. They knew these recordings were real, and now the world knew it too. Next, the documentary revealed adult-themed clips and survivor interviews describing coercion, intimidation, and controlled environments. These weren't random stories. They mapped perfectly onto allegations Cassie had made long before anyone took her seriously. The attorneys compared each interview with their private case files and found a shocking consistency. Different people, different eras, but identical patterns. This wasn't coincidence. It was corroboration on a scale they didn't expect to find on Netflix. Then the Tupac and Biggie segments hit, and this is where Cassie's lawyers truly understood the magnitude of what was coming. Not because these murders were part of Cassie's case, but because the documentary showed a terrifying breadth of behavior. Patterns of violence, patterns of control, patterns of secrecy. A world where threats and coercion appeared to be standard tools. If even half of these allegations held weight, it transformed the entire narrative around Diddy's sentencing. One attorney closed her laptop and said, "The court never saw this. They never saw any of this." That's when they made their decision. Within hours, Cassie's legal team drafted an emergency submission to Judge Aaron Sobermanian. They cited specific segments from the documentary, included screenshots, time-coded transcripts, and digital comparisons. They highlighted the undeniable pattern of behavior shown in the film and explained how these revelations filled the gaps left in the original court process. Their letter didn't request an opinion. It demanded action. When the submission hit the judge's desk, insiders say he immediately instructed clerks to retrieve raw footage and independent forensic reports. He spent hours reviewing scenes, marking timestamps, and comparing statements. This wasn't a judge reacting to public pressure. This was a judge responding to newly discovered evidence that fundamentally altered the understanding of an already serious case. And while Cassie's legal team prepared for what came next, Diddy's team scrambled. Phones buzzed. Meetings were called. PR advisors panicked. The documentary didn't just expose a man, it exposed a history. Because now, thanks to the reckoning, the court had something it never had before. A complete, horrifying picture. And once a picture becomes clear, the law has no choice but to act. The explosion didn't start in the courthouse. It started in the media. By the morning of December 6th, The Reckoning had transformed from a Netflix documentary into a global emergency broadcast. Every major news outlet in the United States opened with the same headline: Diddy exposed. New documentary reveals dark truths. But it wasn't just the coverage, it was the tone. Anchors spoke differently. Analysts leaned forward. Criminal experts used words like pattern, predatory behavior, and undeniable consistency. CNN replayed the hallway footage side by side with past police reports. MSNBC invited trauma specialists who explained how the documentary's stories aligned almost perfectly with established abuse cycles. Fox News hosted former law enforcement officers who admitted on live television that they had never seen this level of corroboration in a celebrity case. But the real shock was how fast the story spread beyond traditional media. Podcasts recorded emergency episodes in the middle of the night. TikTok creators dissected scenes frame by frame. YouTube analysts built entire evidence boards connecting the dots across decades. The internet didn't just react, it investigated. Creators posted videos pausing the audio recordings, enhancing background sounds, matching phone call details with old articles. Survivors who once stayed anonymous began posting cryptic messages hinting that the truth was finally seeing daylight. Former employees tweeted things like, "I knew this day would come," without even naming him, because everyone already knew who they meant. And with every clip from The Reckoning, the outrage grew louder. Old interviews resurfaced of artists describing Diddy as controlling, dangerous, or untouchable. A radio host replayed a 2009 conversation where a musician tried to hint at Diddy's dark side but laugh it off out of fear. Now viewers understood what those clues really meant. For the first time, people weren't ignoring the whispers. They were connecting them. Television panels turned into heated debates about how someone with so much influence could silence so many for so long. One legal expert said, "If even 10% of this documentary holds up in court, the original sentence is nowhere near appropriate." Another replied, "The court system is going to have to answer for this." And that's exactly what happened. As the documentary dominated headlines, public pressure mounted on the justice system. Protesters gathered outside SDNY court holding signs like, "Reopen the case," "Justice for survivors," "No more industry protection." Hashtags began trending worldwide. Hashtag Diddy exposed, hashtag reckoning truth, hashtag justice for Cassie. Even celebrities cautiously began distancing themselves, deleting old photos and avoiding questions during interviews. The internet wasn't just reacting, but it was demanding accountability. Inside the courthouse, staff whispered that Judge Arun Subramanian was reviewing segments of the documentary himself. Clerks noticed him replaying certain clips multiple times. Prosecutors began discussing the possibility of reintroducing evidence they once considered unusable. Reporters crowded the lobby, hoping to capture even a hint of the judge's reaction. And then came the shift. Legal correspondents began reporting that an emergency reassessment of Diddy's sentence was now likely. Court insiders hinted that the judge was preparing a major announcement. The media frenzy doubled. News vans lined the streets. Helicopters filmed from above. Commentators said this could be the biggest celebrity legal reversal of the decade. The pressure reached a breaking point. The public demanded it. The evidence supported it. And the judge could no longer ignore it. The rumor became official. The case was being reopened. And the world prepared for the moment Diddy would be forced to face every truth he thought he had buried. By the night of December 8th, the pressure around the Diddy case had grown so massive that even people inside the courthouse said it felt like a storm forming over the building. Every hour brought new revelations, new clips from the reckoning, new witnesses emerging online, and more reporters crowding the sidewalks. It wasn't just a trending topic anymore. It had become a national investigation, powered not by law enforcement, but by millions of people demanding answers. Inside SDNY court, Judge Arun Subramanian reviewed every new submission sent by Cassie's legal team. Screenshots, transcripts, timestamps, forensic comparisons. The documentary had done something extraordinary. It connected years of scattered allegations into one coherent, devastating timeline. And as the judge highlighted page after page, underlined segments, and watched key documentary scenes in full resolution, one truth became unavoidable. The original 50-month sentence was no longer acceptable. Not even close. By early morning on December 9th, rumors swirled in the halls that the judge was preparing something major. Prosecutors were called into private conferences. Senior clerks stayed late. Security staff received new instructions for increased presence. No one knew the details, but everyone felt the shift. Something was coming. Then, just after 6:30 a.m. on December 10th, an official notice appeared on the court's internal system and immediately leaked to the media. Emergency hearing scheduled, Thursday, December 11th, 9 a.m. No explanation, no context, just a date, a time, and one line that sent shockwaves across the country. News networks went live within minutes. Commentators shouted over each other, trying to predict what the hearing meant. TikTok creators posted countdown videos. Twitter became a battlefield of opinions, theories, and reactions. Protesters began organizing to gather outside the courthouse. By sunrise, dozens had already arrived with signs calling for justice. Diddy's legal team was blindsided. Phones rang nonstop. Meetings were held through the night. PR consultants panicked, scrambling to craft statements that suddenly felt useless. One insider leaked that Diddy hadn't slept at all, staying awake, watching clips from The Reckoning on loop, realizing the walls he built for decades were collapsing in real time. And when December 11th finally arrived, the courthouse looked like the center of the universe. Helicopters buzzed above. Barricades lined every sidewalk. Reporters practiced their live introductions, waiting for anything. A glimpse of Diddy, a word from the attorneys, a drop of information. Inside the courtroom, the energy was electric and terrifying at the same time. Prosecutors entered with boxes, not folders, not binders, boxes of digital evidence. USB drives, hard copies, forensic reports, audio logs, metadata analysis. They weren't preparing for a discussion. They were preparing for a takedown. Then the doors opened and Diddy walked in under heavy marshal escort. He didn't look like a billionaire. He didn't look like a mogul. He looked like a man staring into the mouth of a verdict he could no longer outrun. His hands shook. His breathing was shallow. He kept his eyes down as he took his seat beside his defense team. Even the murmurs in the courtroom quieted when they saw him. Something about his posture, his expression, made the gravity of the moment settle over everyone. At 9 a.m. sharp, Judge Arun Subramanian entered the courtroom with a binder thicker than any he had carried before. It was stuffed with new evidence, marked with sticky notes, highlighted passages, and handwritten annotations. He didn't greet anyone. He didn't perform formalities. He simply sat, adjusted his glasses, and said in a low, steady voice, "We will begin." In that instant, the courtroom knew this wasn't a review. This wasn't a clarification. This was the beginning of the end. Diddy's fate was no longer in question. It was about to be rewritten in the harshest way possible. The moment prosecutors connected their laptop to the courtroom monitor, An eerie silence spread across the room, the kind of silence that feels like everyone is holding the same breath, waiting for a blow they know is coming. There was no grand introduction, no speeches, no theatrics, just a click, and the first frame lit up the screen. What the world had seen on Netflix was disturbing enough, but here in a federal courtroom, the unedited versions carried a weight that felt almost unbearable. The hallway footage appeared first, crystal clear, timestamp glowing. A woman, shaken, terrified, rushing toward the elevator. A blurred figure following closely behind. Prosecutors froze the frame, zooming in on small details most viewers never noticed. The crack in the wall, the reflection in a metal railing, the shadows lining up exactly with the account Cassie gave years earlier. Everything matched, every movement, every second, every fear she had written in her testimony. Diddy's breathing quickened. He looked like a man watching his own defense evaporate in real time. Then the audio files hit, the ones people online debated endlessly. Except this time, prosecutors played the raw, forensic versions, not the edited documentary clips. Voices shaking, a woman pleading, objects falling, a man's voice giving cold, calculated orders. The courtroom speakers amplified every breath, every tremor, every whispered threat. Prosecutors showed waveform charts proving the audio was authentic, unaltered, and linked directly to devices known to be in Diddy's possession at the time. Agnifilo tried to object. Context missing, inflammatory, edited for effect. But prosecutors had anticipated every argument. They presented device logs, location pings, time-matched phone records, and independent digital verification. Every objection died before it even left his mouth. Next came the adult-themed clips, blurred for the courtroom, but still enough to show the dangerous environments Diddy allegedly created. The victims' voices trembled as they described how they were controlled, coerced, manipulated, and emotionally trapped. Prosecutors displayed sworn statements next to the screen, showing identical patterns from completely unrelated women. Different years, different cities, same blueprint of abuse. Jurors weren't present, but even the judge's expression shifted. A tiny tightening of the jaw, a deeper breath, the kind of reaction judges rarely show unless something hits harder than expected. But then the courtroom descended into a deeper darkness. The Tupac and Biggie segments. People leaned forward. Diddy leaned back. Prosecutors replayed clips from the reckoning, then pulled out law enforcement notes, FBI summaries, and interviews previously dismissed as rumors. They didn't accuse Diddy outright of murder. They didn't have to. Instead, they showed payments, suspicious phone logs, witness recollections, and old police memos that hinted at a pattern of violence and intimidation that stretched across decades. It painted a picture of a man who didn't just hurt people privately. He controlled environments publicly. Finally, prosecutors unveiled the most devastating visual, a side-by-side timeline, left, Netflix scenes, interviews, audio clips. Right, old police reports, Cassie's testimony, witness statements, financial logs, digital footprints. The two timelines synced perfectly, scene after scene, date after date, like puzzle pieces falling into place after years in the dark. Someone in the courtroom whispered, "Oh my God." Even Marshall shifted uncomfortably. Diddy's face turned pale, his lips trembled. He clenched his hands together, staring at the screen as if watching his entire past attack him at once. His chest rose and fell rapidly. His eyes glossed with panic. By the time prosecutors finished, hours had passed. The judge's binder was full, pages folded, highlighted, annotated. He closed it slowly, deliberately, like a man preparing to deliver a verdict he already knew would change everything. This wasn't a review of evidence. This was the collapse of a defense, the destruction of a reputation, and the moment everyone realized the original 50-month sentence wasn't just insufficient. It was about to be obliterated in the harshest way possible. Judge Arun Subramanian didn't speak immediately. He just sat there, hands folded, eyes locked on the mountain of evidence in front of him. The unedited footage, the verified recordings, the sworn statements, the timelines that lined up with terrifying precision. The courtroom was silent, but not the normal polite silence of legal proceedings. This was the kind of silence that feels like something enormous is about to break. Diddy sat frozen, shoulders shaking slightly, his eyes locked on the floor. His lawyer whispered something to him, something urgent, but Diddy didn't respond. He looked hollow, defeated, almost like he already knew the words that were about to come. The judge finally lifted his gaze, and the second he did, the entire room straightened. Prosecutors braced themselves. Reporters gripped their pens. Marshals took a half step closer to Diddy, as if preparing for whatever his reaction would be. Globwam, Judge Subramanian began, his voice steady but heavy. This court has now reviewed material far more extensive and severe than what was presented during your original sentencing. He turned a page. Diddy's fingers twitched. The newly submitted evidence, including digital documentation, corroborated survivor statements, and authenticated audiovisual records, reveals a pattern of conduct that cannot be ignored. A murmur rippled through the courtroom. The judge continued unfazed. What we have seen today is not a fragment of misconduct. It is not a misunderstanding. It is not the narrative presented during your prior proceedings. He paused, then delivered the line that made the entire room hold its breath. It is a consistent, repeated pattern of violence, coercion, intimidation, and manipulation spanning many years and many victims. Diddy flinched, visibly, like the words struck him physically. The judge turned another page of his binder, tapping one paragraph with a firm finger. This court must consider not only the harm done to individual victims, but the scale of harm demonstrated by corroborated evidence presented today. The documentary material, combined with formal submissions, has fundamentally changed the understanding of your behavior. The judge leaned forward slightly. Therefore, in accordance with federal law, this court is obligated to reassess your prior sentence. Agnifilo stood up abruptly. Your Honor, the judge raised a hand sharply. Sit down, Mr. Agnifilo. You will not interrupt this ruling. The entire room froze again. Diddy's throat bobbed as he swallowed hard. Judge Subramanian closed the binder slowly, decisively. The previous sentence of 50 months, he said, voice firm, no longer reflects the severity and the totality of the defendant's actions. He inhaled deeply, a quiet moment of gravity, before delivering the blow that would echo through the legal world for decades. Effective immediately, this court increases your sentence to life imprisonment. The room erupted, gasps, whispers, shocked reactions, but all of it blurred into nothing compared to what happened at the defense table. Diddy's body buckled. He leaned forward, gripping the table so hard his knuckles turned white. His chest heaved as if the air had been ripped out of him. His eyes widened, then blurred with tears. For a moment, it looked like he might collapse entirely. Marshals rushed in, hands ready to steady him. The man who once stood on stages in front of thousands, the man who built empires, the man who thought he was untouchable, was now staring at the rest of his life behind bars. His lawyer tried to speak again, voice cracking as he shouted, Your Honor, we request. The judge cut him off sharply. This ruling is final. The words hung in the air like a stone dropping into deep water. Heavy, irreversible, absolute. Diddy stared straight ahead, tears streaming down his face, unable to move, unable to breathe, unable to comprehend that everything he built, every lie he hid, every wall he constructed, had collapsed in one devastating moment. And everyone in that courtroom knew this wasn't just a sentence. This was the end of Sean Diddy Combs. The moment Judge Arun Subramanian finished delivering the life sentence, the courtroom didn't just fall silent. It collapsed into a stunned, breathless stillness. It felt like time froze. For a few seconds, nobody moved, nobody whispered, nobody even blinked, because everyone in that room knew they had just witnessed the most dramatic fall of a music empire in modern history. This wasn't a sentencing hearing anymore. This was the burial of a legacy. Diddy's body sagged in his chair, as if the weight of every secret he had ever hidden suddenly dropped onto his shoulders at once. His chest rose sharply, then collapsed. His hands trembled uncontrollably. The billionaire who once commanded rooms with his presence now looked like a man trying to stay conscious under a tidal wave of reality. His lawyer leaned in, whispering rapidly, maybe trying to calm him, maybe trying to explain what just happened. But Diddy didn't react. His eyes were glazed, unfocused, locked on nothing. His world had shattered. Reporters covered their mouths. Some wiped their eyes, overwhelmed by the intensity of the moment. Even prosecutors, who fought tirelessly for this outcome, stood frozen, absorbing the magnitude of the judge's decision. Marshals tightened their formation, ready to escort Diddy away, but even they hesitated, sensing that they were standing inside a historic moment. Then Judge Subramanian spoke again, his voice firm and devastating. The evidence reviewed today reveals a pattern of predatory behavior of extraordinary magnitude. The court finds no alternative but the maximum sentence allowed under federal law. Diddy jerked slightly, a small broken reaction, because hearing it again made it real. There was no appeal in the judge's tone, no discussion, no possibility of reconsideration. This was final. This was permanent. This was the end. A low sob escaped Diddy's throat. His hand went to his face, trembling violently. He tried to wipe his tears, but his arm dropped halfway as if he didn't have the strength. One marshal took a step closer, steadying him with a gentle hand on the shoulder. Diddy didn't resist. He didn't argue. He didn't speak. He looked like a man whose soul had stepped out of his body. The judge stood up. Everyone rose with him, except Diddy. He couldn't. That was the turning point. The moment the world witnessed a man who once believed he was untouchable finally lose everything. Fame couldn't save him. Money couldn't protect him. Silence couldn't hide him. For decades, people whispered that Diddy lived above consequences. But now he sat slumped in a courtroom, sentenced to spend the rest of his life behind bars, defeated by the very truth he spent his life burying. Outside, the news traveled like wildfire. Cameras flashed. Reporters shouted in disbelief. Protesters cheered. Social media exploded with one headline repeated everywhere. The reckoning just buried Diddy forever. Inside, marshals gently lifted Diddy to his feet. His legs buckled. His head hung low. His shoulders shook. They placed handcuffs on him, the final symbol that his freedom was gone forever. As they led him toward the side door, he turned slightly, as if searching for someone, anyone, who could undo what just happened. But there was no one. Not his lawyers, not his team, not his fame, not his past. He walked forward slowly, swallowed by the hallway beyond the courtroom, a hallway leading not to a private jet or a studio or a mansion, but to the first day of the rest of his life in a prison cell. That was the moment the world understood. This wasn't just a legal loss. This was the final downfall of Sean Diddy Combs, a fall so massive, so public, so irreversible, that history would remember the day the reckoning didn't just expose him, it ended him.